You've just stepped into the Midlife Revolution Unleashed, your space to ignite possibility, redefine purpose, and embrace the power that comes with age and experience. Co-hosted by yours truly, Coach Wayne.
And I'm Coach Stacey M. Lewis. We are two seasoned coaches focused on the midlife community of color. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. In a world that sometimes forgets the power and the wisdom that comes with age, we are here to ignite a revolution and rewrite the narrative of this incredible journey.
So, whether you're navigating your career, growing your business, rediscovering passions, or challenging the status quo, this is your space. So, buckle up. Let's dive into the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Hello, it's another episode of Midlife Revolution Unleashed, and you would have no idea what just happened, Stacey. I just spilled coffee on my desk, and so I'll pretend it didn't happen and just keep it moving.
Okay, well, while Wayne dabs that up, welcome to the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I am Stacey Lewis. I am a nonprofit executive, a midlife women's coach, a lover of God and his people, and I am so glad that you are here and tuned in to the Midlife Revolution Unleashed, where I have the joy of being joined by my co-host, Sir Wayne Dawson. All right, how you doing over there, Coach Wayne?
Well, I'm good, Stace, and we're going to talk about exactly the principles of when coffee spills on your day, how you keep it moving, right? So today we're going to talk about, how to, in these uncertain times, especially in the world of work, in the world of business, we are faced in the USA with a lot of changes, a lot of transitions. And so folks are feeling somewhat fearful, uncertain. And we're saying that, yes, you may feel justified in all of that, but understand it's also an opportunity to find and call on your strengths and to pivot and move forward. As we say, make your setbacks your comebacks. And so today we want to share some ideas around how, especially you midlife listening in, can pivot right now.
Absolutely. And the reality is that we're all seeing it, right? We are seeing people laid off or fired or jobs eliminated by, the hundreds, if not the thousands. And our first goal is to offer encouragement, to remind you that you are not alone, to let you know that we are here not only as coaches, but as supporters. I think both Wayne and I have been through job transition, certainly know what that's like. And we want to make sure that we're here to empower you to shift, to reinvent yourself, your career, and to move forward in light of the uncertainty with a growth mindset for sure.
Yeah. Stacey, you said it nicely, but yes, I've been fired before. I've had the transition made for me, so to speak, in a younger, less decisive, wiser me. And so I learned from the lesson and have since grown enough to be able to not only help myself be bigger, better, bolder, but as a coach, help so many others get through those transitions. Whether you decide to look for a new job on your own or you're forced out, as is happening right now, there's a way out. And Stacey, the first thing I would offer to folks during this time is get a real assessment of where you are and where you want to be. It begins with knowing your real.
Knowing your real. I like it. Yes, I agree. Knowing who you are, and importantly, knowing what matters most to you. We know that oftentimes our, jobs are intricately tied to our income, and we can easily get emotionally hijacked by the concerns over finances. And in these situations, we want to keep in the real, as you said, we want to keep the first things first. And what's first is what matters most to you, not just the dollar, but what are your values? What part of you is most important to focus on in this time as you understand your career purpose?
That's a big one, Stace, because your values, especially when I call it the opportunity comes to relaunch, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes we don't realize that what looks initially like a trial is really a blessing for a triumph. And so
Mhm.
when we're faced with an opportunity to relaunch and reassess where we are and reinvent ourselves, we got to make sure that we are in alignment with our core values, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to go lose sleep at night because you're caught up in something and the mission and the values and the goals of the company you're working with is not in alignment with your own. So assess your core values. As you said, Stacy, what is
Yeah.
truly driving you? What's important to you?
Yeah, one of those questions you can ask yourself is, what aspects of my work have been or have felt the most meaningful, the most valuable, the most impactful, and the most resonant with who I am today. And, just a sidebar to the point that I raised earlier about, both of us having likely lost our jobs. That's the reality of midlife, right? That most of us have been in this position where we haven't planned the transition, but someone else has planned our transition. And we do want to remind you to build up your faith and trust as well. Just trust God. It's all going to work out, even if it's rocky in the middle. But we do. But one thing that I learned in being fired or terminated is that it will all work out. It feels a little scary, or very scary, but it does work out. And really keeping my values and what matters most to me um, front and center was really important to moving forward.
Yeah. And Stacey, while you're trusting God and you're praying and you're fasting and you're doing that, there are things that you have to do as well in preparation, because just praying on its own, you
Hmm.
know, is a little bit of an escape route.
Right.
And
You have to
so
work and pray.
you got to put
Hmm.
the work in. So today we want to share, right, Stace? It's like
Hmm.
going to the race, but just praying to win, but never jumping out the starting blocks, right? You got to
Right.
get on the track
Right.
and run.
Right. Right. And you have to define what the success looks like for you, right? And that even comes across in your faith walk and in your prayer life, right? Like, okay, what does moving forward successfully look like for me? What does it feel like for me? And asking yourself those self-coaching questions is really helpful to moving forward.
And Stacey, here's a big issue with the men that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the men I work with in an environment where, especially as you start climbing the ladder, they are feeling all alone
Mm.
up there as
Mm-hmm.
men of color. And what happens is there's a question around how much of yourself do you want to disband? We talked about code switching just so you can get ahead. You
Mm-hmm.
know, how much do you want to play along? And there's a question, of course, around it right now, because as brothers move up the ladder and just move in general across the board in their places of work, we are extremely mindful right now as to how we show up. And so we have to determine, like you said, what does success really look like
Mhm.
for us? And it may
Mhm.
not be getting that position and that title that, traditionally looks like where it should be, but it may be working at the level where you can truly have a greater impact with others.
Or maybe working at the level where you are carrying less stress about the position, possibly making a little less money, but carrying less stress in ways that allow you to pursue some of those passions that we'll probably talk a little later about in today's episode. So it really is expanding our thinking to explore these new possibilities from a more positive mindset. Yes, things happen to us, but how we respond, how we react, is what we can control.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about transferable skills.
Mm-hmm.
I had an opportunity when I left New York I left the world of non for profit to get into corporate. And in an industry and in a segment that I had no experience per se. But what I was able to sell to the recruiter at the time and the interviewers when I got there to Florida was the fact that as a leader, I had tons of experience to be able to lead a team.
Mm-hmm.
Learning the nuances of the business was the easy part, doing the
Yes,
boarding and the
absolutely.
preceptorship and all that was offered to me. But they needed a leader. That's what they needed. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you are looking at moving through this transient time, go deep and find out what your skill sets are, where your strengths are, and make sure that you are creating a story to show how you can fill gaps and needs and create impact.
Absolutely. I mean, this idea of the transferable skills, we all have them. And it is a matter of really identifying them and identifying ways that they empower us. Like you said, that leadership skill, right? That was a moment of empowerment, just recognizing the level of leadership skills that you had, and then how that can be applied to almost any environment, nonprofit, for profit, industry. It doesn't matter. It is the skill that you have developed over years of working and leading and growing, that really are there for you now, for you to resource and move forward. And those transferable skills, they cannot be underrated.
Yeah. Stacey, I last week I invited two clients to work with them, and they're in two separate positions, but they're both concerned about this transient period, right?
Hmm.
And one is a senior person where he works, and the other is mid-level manager. And one is on a PIP, the other is being ushered out since the DEI uproar that's happening in the
Mm-hmm.
country. And so they're both, as it were, on lifelines, trying to figure it out at different levels. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that I'm helping them to figure out is, first of all, their strengths. And, you're going to tell this story, but to the point that we're making in terms of skill set and transferable skills, dig deep, do your assessment, and find ways of identifying, and I call it your zone of genius.
Mm-hmm.
It's that place where you zone of excellence, we know what that is. When people get to that zone of excellence, you're getting the optimal bonus because you've performed above the average and you're doing well and you're getting the kudos
Mm-hmm.
and people are saying, aha, boy, you get the awards. And people tend to get stuck there. When you're in that zone of excellence, we stay there for a awesome long time because it just feels good. But in previous episodes, we talk about getting out of your comfort zone. So even when you're good at what you do, there's another zone above that, your zone of genius. And sometimes we all have that, but we are afraid to stay there or go there. If you can identify what that is,
Mm-hmm.
now you have a unique selling proposition to take with you to the next employer or opportunity.
Absolutely. The other thing about the zone of genius that I really appreciate is that that can be where your fire is too, because you know that that's where you're pulling in your transferable skills, you're pulling in your strengths, you're pulling in the things that drive you and fuel you in a way that feels a little like gas in your tank. And often your zone of genius is that place. Last episode we talked about this idea of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship, and really what some of those characteristics are, the ways to think. And it's that creativity that gets fueled in your zone of genius, and that taking those strategic risks that are ignited in your zone of genius. And so I think it's a great mention here, to really talk about that way of leveraging your strength into your zone of genius, to move forward during these times. So when maybe you just want to explore new opportunities because you are on the job and you can sense the groundswell that says, it might be a good time for me to look for other opportunities. So this doesn't have, it's not only if the transition or that transition is being made for you, but it is also if you're sensing for whatever reason that you need to make a move, right? This idea of reinventing you in your career, really leveraging and turning your career setbacks into those comebacks. This is the time. This is the time for that transformation, that tapping into that zone of genius.
Stacey, this is such rich quality stuff. I'm loving it. And I'm hoping that you, the listener, is taking notes, copious notes, and applying what we're sharing, because this is stuff that works. This is not theory. This is practice.
Right. Right.
Stacey, if we can stay on this a little bit longer, because this
Sure.
is so important, and we're helping people to identify opportunities now and break through and survive, beyond survive, thrive during this whole transient
Mm-hmm.
period. So we talk about identifying these strengths, your transferable skills, even looking at your genius point,
Mm-hmm.
right? But how do you then get that across as you're looking to place yourself at another tier to level up? Well, you want to tell the story of your achievements.
Mm-hmm.
We also call that your impact statement. So you got to create and craft for yourself the places and the things where in your world of work you have accomplished. And again, accomplishments will be, for the most part, it's best identified if it's quantitatively measured rather than just
Mm-hmm.
qualitatively measured.
Absolutely.
So you want to have some metrics. When I created X and Y system, this is the amount of savings that we got,
Mm-hmm.
or the time that we cut down was X, Y, and Z. That's an impact. And bosses, leaders, employers, they want to see how you solve problems in terms of measurable impact. So you have to tell your story. Folks are not going to read your mind. And you have now an opportunity to start crafting your story, your achievement story, your impact statement, and know this. Sort of like your elevator story in the
Yeah.
introduction of telling who you are. You have this story, Stacey, that you put in front of you and make sure that you're identifying needs and gaps for the next level that you can impact.
Absolutely. And I think there was so many gems just in that telling of your story, right? It is owning, like taking your story back. I think in these times when, when you mentioned, people being on a pip and really kind of organizations or companies cultural changes, right? Sometimes those are things you can't control, and you don't want to allow someone else to tell your story, even in that performance improvement process, right? At a certain point, someone's going to tell the story they want to tell, and you cannot allow them to create the story of you in your mind that's going to move you forward. Like you said, developing that impact statement. I love that idea. And even if your situation on your job is great, having your impact story remind you of who you are, and having that data that you talked about, right? The data of your impact, that's always going to be valuable. So whether it is on the job or whether it is in your pursuit of a new gig, that data and that impact statement will always be powerful. So don't wait.
Yeah. Stacey, when we were preparing today and discussing it, one of the things that you raised and you use it effectively in your world of work is the idea of networking.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get around and your name is in places where it should be, in a good way, because you learn how to network strategically at a time like now. That's so key. Networking, connecting with people, because a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
the job boards don't post the real inside stuff, right? That's happening because someone in the company said, who do you know that may fill
Mm-hmm.
this position that fits in our culture? And so a lot of times the recruiters are working with insiders before
Mm-hmm.
you see anything outside. So I say that to say, how do you become an inside guy? It's through networking, strategic networking.
Yeah, I think there was so much there. One is, often some company cultures, including the one I work for, um, operate with a core value that says we want to promote from within, right? We want to grow the talent that we have and promote from within. So you're right, a lot of those opportunities don't make it to the outside because the part of the goal is to promote from within. This idea of networking and exploring your opportunities, exploring the possibilities, I think expands beyond those that might be in your collegial sphere, right? Whether they be on your job or leaving the job or former jobs, but also exploring those new connections with folks you don't know. And one of the things, you and I talked about, Wayne, is taking up these opportunities. Many of us see coaches, whether it be on LinkedIn or Facebook or, in our daily life. But if you see a coach that you find slightly interesting, consider just having that conversation. I don't know any coaches that don't offer a complimentary conversation, right? Whether they call it a discovery call, a complimentary coaching call, it is that opportunity to have a conversation, to network in a way that will also show you more about you, right? So you get some insight if it's a good coach, you get some value if it's a good coach, and you get to learn more about you. So that to me is a win-win. It's really leveraging your strengths and exploring possibilities and expanding your network. So I just love that idea. I just wanted to
Well
share
said.
it.
I didn't even think of that. Thinking of it that way, Stacy, and that's the industry that I'm in. Imagine,
Mm-hmm.
because when folks come to me for a gift coaching session or a complimentary coaching session, I'm learning about them, but I'm also giving them enough information. So if they wanted to try to do it yourself, at least they know the what to go away with, right? At some extent. They may not all have the how together, which is where a follow up
Mm-hmm.
might come in,
Mm-hmm.
Stacy. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't lose really if you're doing the network and strategically doing that. It's not manipulating others, but let's say right now you're looking for leverage into a competitor's shop because yours
Mm-hmm.
is closing down, or your
Mm-hmm.
position, your department, or even internally, you're just trying to move laterally or upwardly. Find someone who you can groom starting now. It should have probably started ahead of now, but that you can groom, that has the influence to be
Mm.
able to speak your name in a way that is going to open doors for you. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, create a sponsor. That's
Mm-hmm.
important. Someone
Mm-hmm.
who, when you're not there and your name is mentioned, can say, yes, that's somebody I think we ought to be talking to. But you can do this deliberately, intentionally, by finger pointing who you want based on where you need to be and working your way through. We'll teach people how to do that when we meet with you. But that's key to networking, being
Yeah,
strategic.
I agree. It's being intentional, right? Like you said, not being manipulative. Um, but everyone that's in the coaching realm is here to add value, right? It is not, yes, we do it as part of our business, our practice. But we want to add value. And so, even in this conversation, our goal is to add value and to really utilize these opportunities. I love the mention of, sponsorship, right? It is building relationship in a way where someone remembers you, where someone also feels really confident in talking about you and your skill set, or you as an asset, in ways that sound better coming from someone else than coming from you, right? That everyone has different access to different ears, right? Our voices really shine in different spaces. And so really making sure that you are building a network, that you're there to support and sponsor others, and others are there to do the same for you. I love that part of networking.
I love it. Stacy, we had an episode where we said, say yes to opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now is a good time when you know that you are showing up to show your value, to say yes to sometimes to projects that other people shy away
Yeah.
from, right?
Mm-hmm.
To take on stuff, fully immerse yourself, be 100% responsible,
Mm-hmm.
and take it on. Now's a good time to show that value.
And shine, right? Shine,
Yeah.
shine. And if you feel like your shine is not going to be accepted or appreciated, then it's a good time to start looking.
Yeah. Stace, let's
Mhm.
offer a little bit of a roundup, if we will, around some takeaways that folks
Mhm.
should have right now, right here, from the Midlife Revolution Unleashed, as to how they can make themselves reinvented,
Mhm.
better, bigger, bolder as they go through this transition.
Yeah, this is, about your next chapter, right? And sometime our next chapter is focused on, we talked about parenting last week. Sometime our next chapter is focused on, personal pursuits or personal growth. And today we're talking about your next chapter and your career, and turning those setbacks into comebacks. And one, action step is to identify. We talked about identifying your strengths. One action step is to identify areas in which you are also desiring growth, right? Where do you want to learn something? Where do you feel like, in alignment with your values and your skills, there's an opportunity for you to learn something that will help you in this next chapter?
Yeah. So keep your mind open.
Mm-hmm.
Stay learning.
So many
Feel,
opportunities.
yeah, feel and know that if you're in mid-career or midlife transition, it's not the end. It's a launch, an opportunity to launch yourself and transition to your next level.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger, better, bolder, as we say. Stacey,
Yeah,
how
yeah,
can
yeah.
people reach you for some of that good coaching that you offer?
Oh, well, I can always be reached at thestacymlewis.com. There's no E in the Stacy. As well as those of you that I'm connected with on LinkedIn. You can also find me on LinkedIn. It is just my joy to serve. So please reach out, connect with me. You have a question, share it in the DMs, follow the podcast, all of that good stuff. How about you, Wayne?
Same for me, Stace. I would say go to my website,
Mhm.
viptransformativeliving.com, where you'll see lots of options to connect with me on various social media channels. And be sure to DM me for a gift session to figure out how we can move together to take you to the top.
Yeah, we just want to remind you, reconnect with your why, remember your values, tackle those opportunities to learn new things and to set yourself in a position to soar, because that's what you're here for, to soar. Make your mark.
Stace, thanks again. It's always a pleasure sharing this platform with you, my lady. And we'll do it again next week. Same time, same place.
Thanks for listening in.
Bye for now. And there you have it, folks. This week's episode of the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. Hey, we truly appreciate your spending this time in this space with us. Join us next week at the same time as we dive into relevant topics and present solutions to spark new thinking and empower your midlife journey.
And don't forget, if you enjoyed today's episode, let us know in the comments and share it with others. And of course, remember to subscribe, share, like, hit that notification bell. You are the Midlife Revolution Unleashed. I'm Coach Stacy, and I'm cheering you on.
And I'm Coach Wayne, and I'll see you at the top.